Thank you, Cantor Stevens, for that beautiful piece of music. So I am privileged to share some words of Torah with you today. And I want to talk about that the book of Leviticus, like it has for many of us, has never felt more relevant to me than it does right now. This week's Parsha deals with many forms of skin disease and the 3 steps of dealing with it that very much parallel our current situation. How to diagnose people with the disease, how to treat them, including quarantine, and how to welcome the person back into the camp. So step 1, examination. The priest must examine the person's skin. If it doesn't appear to be healing, then the priest shall isolate hanega, which in Hebrew means the affliction, for 7 days. And what's interesting to note here is that the object of the verb is no longer the person, but the disease itself. The Torah, I think, is warning us that the Kohen in this situation is no longer seeing the person, but just the disease. And it's very easy for us to do that as well, for people to become only diagnoses or to become just numbers. Every one of the 422 people who died yesterday in New York was a person with a name and a family and many people who loved them. They were never just a number. I have read very moving accounts of doctors and hospitals who take a minute to hold their patient's hand or look them in the eye for a minute before they intubate them. This enables them to see the humanity in every person that they treat. And we are trying to do this in our own way at CSAAR. We have made sure that no one feels like just an illness or just a number. We're calling people who are sick, tending to those who have lost loved ones, and offering emotional and practical support to our older members. If you have any ideas on how to do this better, or if you know someone who needs more support, including yourself, please don't hesitate to let us know. Step 2, quarantine. The Torah says that the person sick with the disease shall dwell alone, that their dwelling shall be outside the camp. They must live outside the camp to protect others from infection and remain alone until the disease heals. They must go into quarantine. And the concept of quarantine is much older than I even realized. It goes back as much as the 18th century BCE in ancient Syria. In fact, it's even true in apes. In the 1960s, Jane Goodall observed how the chimpanzees fearfully quarantined their peers who showed sign of illness or of getting injured. Needing to separate sometimes is ingrained evolutionarily in us. But people who are quarantined inevitably feel lonely and isolated. This loneliness is true for all of us now due to social distancing, and even more true for those who are quarantined in their homes. As a shul community, we are making sure that people do not feel lonely through our Emunah small groups and through our Zoom programming. We're shopping and getting packages for those who are quarantined, or those who are elderly, or those who, for whatever reason, can't do it themselves. We are making sure everyone knows they are still and are always an integral part of our shul. Step 3, purification. Once the person can come back into the camp, they must make sacrifices to God as part of the purification process. And during this process, the priest applies blood of the sacrifice to the ear, to the thumb, and to the toe of the purified person. And I have always loved this verse. Stick with me for a minute and you'll see why. Purifying these areas of the body, I think, is symbolic of how we act in the world after going through such an intense illness. We use our ears to listen to God and to each other. We use our thumb and our hands to reach out to one another and help each other. And we use our feet to decide what path we want to go on now that we've been given a second chance. And that's a lot of the things this amazing community is doing. We listen to each other. We help each other. We reach out to each other. We are all figuring out what path we should take next as we continue through this difficult period. And in our best moments, we look towards the future of what will happen afterwards when this pandemic subsides. On a personal note, I have very much been living these 3 stages these past 2 weeks. Matan is one of the 271,000 people in New York diagnosed with the coronavirus, which means very likely that Maya and I have it as well. We have been unbelievably lucky, and Matan had very minor symptoms and is feeling back to himself, and Maya and I are healthy and well. We were in quarantine until this morning, and I can honestly say I have never been happier to throw out garbage, do recycling, and have clean clothes, and breathe a little bit of fresh air than I was when I left my apartment this morning. And I'm already thinking about how this has and will change me and us. We're looking into donating plasma to help with an experimental cure. We're thinking about how much more easily we will be able to do errands for others without fear for our own safety. And I'm feeling immense gratitude to God for Matan's health, to our amazing doctor who guided us, and to the staff, family, and lay leaders who have offered to help us. And I know I am not alone. We have many people in our community who have had COVID-19 and recovered, thank God. And we have some in our community who are still sick and struggling, and we send them all of our love and support. But many don't know how to talk about it or are afraid they will be stigmatized if they do reach out. So I'd like to ask us to strive to create a safe space for those who have been diagnosed so they feel comfortable sharing their journeys. Let's continue taking care of each other. Let's call each other, buy each other food, find joy seeing each other over Zoom, and make sure we all feel comfortable sharing our stories of what this pandemic has been like for each of us.